Okay, Brian, you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks, James. I want to welcome everybody to the City of St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee meeting for Thursday, September the 26th, 2024. The time that I have is 2:33, and because we've got quorum, I'd like to call the meeting to order. We begin this gathering by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous people. Do we have any additions to be made to the, or deletions to be made to the agenda?
So we have a couple additions. There will be the first item that we're actually going to deal with is a last minute grant application that came forward for 110 Queen Street. Everybody should have been circulated on that yesterday. We'll deal with that first right off the bat. And then I believe Lorraine had an item for the Well and Canal Task Force that she wanted to have added, and we can add that to miscellaneous items at the end. And I believe also, Gail, you had an item you wanted to add to that as well? Oh, you're muted, Gail. Sorry. Gail, you're muted.
Yes. Yes, you agreed to add that item a couple of days ago.
Yeah, so
City
yeah,
communications, yeah.
about communications. Yep, so we'll add that to the miscellaneous as well at the end.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say a couple of things in miscellaneous as well, primarily about Mayhome.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Okay. So I guess we need a motion to approve the agenda. Ollie, thank you. And all in favor? Done. So I guess we need to approve the or adopt the minutes of the previous meeting. I guess we've got the one set of minutes that needed to be amended.
Yeah, so through the chair, we have the last two meetings need to be approved. There were some issues with the minutes from the last meeting, so I've made some changes and updated them. I ran them by Gail and Lorraine to make sure they were okay with them. So we do need to approve both though today.
Okay.
Just
So
one mistake, just a typo. In 7.1, Kushner's name is spelled wrong. I can't remember whether it's it's Kushner. It's the only thing I found.
Thanks, Gail.
is that for August or July?
I don't recall.
I know which item she's referring to. It's Kushner Park.
Yeah, it's August.
Okay. Well, I guess we should do the July minutes first. So if everybody had a look at those, any questions or changes that need to be made on them? And not seeing any strenuous objections, then I guess we need a motion to approve the amended July 25th minutes.
I'll make that motion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Gail. And all in favor? Okay. And August the 29th. So you said there's that one misspelling of Councillor Krishner's name.
I think that was the August one. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
Not that I could see.
No? Okay. So I guess we need a motion to approve the August minutes.
Why don't I make them both?
If you wish. Sounds good. All in favor? Okay, done. Declarations of interest. Do we have any to be made? Nope. Not seeing any. Then I guess we move on to the business at hand. 110 Queen Street, grant application for, I guess, eavesdropping repairs that need to be done.
Yep, so I will share my screen and we have the owner, Sally McGar, here to speak to the applications. Just hold on 1 second.
So Sally can razzle dazzle us.
Okay, Sally, you can go ahead and explain the application.
Okay, so it's applying for, you'll see, so on the right is 108 Queen and on the left is 110 Queen. And above there is a copper eaves, which is all dented and was never put on properly at the beginning. There's a lot of rotting in the fascia, and the roofing, the doors, the panels, everything. I also brought with me, because I'm not obviously an expert as far as building, Jackie, who will be doing the contracting on it. And it was Jackie's quote that was sent through. I did send in quite a few pictures of where there is all of the damage. And so it was in discussions actually with Lauren, who was very, very helpful, is that I could apply for a grant.
Great, thanks, Ollie.
Do you have any questions so far about this from anybody? I assume that the rotted wood, you're just going to be replacing the rotted sections, trying to blend them in nicely and.
Correct. Yes.
I believe Maria had her hand up, I think.
Oh,
Right,
Maria, go
thank
ahead.
you. Thanks. Pardon my ignorance, but I wonder if Sally or something might explain what the drainage issues were that I believe the people at 108 had if this type of repair went ahead. If you could just briefly explain that to me, please.
Well, it actually isn't. What's happening is all of the water or the flow is all coming through onto my side, onto the 110 side. And that is what's damaging everything. I had approached 108, this is maybe even going back a couple of years ago, about having to do something there. And at that time, they didn't want to either. The ideal, or probably the way it should have been done originally, is that there would be a downspout on the 108 side of the front side of the porch. You'll see in this particular picture on the 110 side, there is the major downspout that comes off of the roof. In this section there's 106, 108, 110, and 112 Queen Street. There are three of us that do have our own downspout. The only one who does not is 108. And that might have been done originally back in 1988. The 106, 108, and 110 Queen came up for sale. Mary Wakel bought 106. 108 was bought by Brian Wakel, and I bought 110. So it was great with the three sales all together. 108 then sold his to the current owner. I'm not sure the exact date. It might have been somewhere in maybe the mid to the late 90s. But that is the only one that does not have their own downspout, if I'm explaining that correctly.
I hear what you're saying. Do the 108 homeowners acknowledge that it is the downspout that may cause the drainage issues, or the new repairs you're proposing to the contiguous eaves? Have they acknowledged that it is the downspout and the lack thereof that might be causing the drainage issues they've identified?
Yeah, they're just saying that they don't want any part in it at all.
I see.
And that they will not pay for anything. But if there is any damage, then they would be after me for any recourse.
I see. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, is there the same amount of rot or any rot on 108 as what you've got on 110?
No, there is not, because
Wow.
at some point that oh, Jackie's going
If I
to
can
speak,
just
if that's
for a
okay.
minute. My name is Jackie Lacasse. Sorry. The damage occurring at 110 on the fascia and the soffit is occurring because if you can see in the picture, if you just scroll back to the front, the facade of the house, right there, you can see the slope on the eaves trough currently. So the current eaves trough was installed incorrectly. The slope was too large. So what's happening on 110 is the water is overflowing from the roof. The drip edge off the roof cannot catch enough water. So it's hitting the fascia board because the drainage slope is so low on 110's eaves trough that there's bare wood visible with the way it was installed originally. So that's why there's more rot on 110 than there is on 108. The other problem with 110 is that is all draining into a collector box on the downspout. If you can see the downspout from the main roof area, there's a collector box. Not sure if it's visible in any picture, but the roof line, eaves trough on the porch, actually pours into, you can see it right there. There's a collector box, so it's burdening the downspout off the roof, the main roof. And I think that's why Sally's proposing to have, sorry, 2 downspouts, 1 on each side, if possible.
Do we have any other questions or comments about the work? Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I'm in the restoration field, as you know. Not all the time do you see a run that small where you definitely need to. Usually, you just have to when there's another owner. But it looks like from rotting fascia boards, it's sunk. And I would check the drip edge on the roof too. It doesn't, like, for that short of a run, I don't see it a big issue to just have one downspout there. But I do have another comment with the quote, Lacasse. And what kind of experience do they have with copper and heritage buildings? Because I do see that it's quote number 1.
Right.
It's a
Right.
brand
We just changed the name of our company, so that's why it's quote number 1. We've been in business since 1999. So we just incorporated about a month ago. So that's why you'll see notice quote number 1, but we have been in business since 1999. We have worked on many homes in Niagara-on-the-Lake and St. Catharines. And our copper eaves trough sub-trade has been doing this for 42 years.
Okay, good. Good to know. Thanks.
I appreciate the question.
And is the copper going to be like a shiny copper, like apparent that it is copper? I mean, because we all know we've had problems with copper eaves troughs going AWOL on heritage buildings in the downtown.
Could you expand on that question? I'm not quite understanding.
Copper thieves have
Yes.
been active in the downtown. So is this going to be like a shiny copper finish, or is it going to have some kind of a coating on it that it's not apparently evident that it's copper?
It is a brand new copper eaves trough that's going on, so it'll be the shining
Okay.
surface. So I never thought of that.
Any other questions, comments? No? Okay, then I guess we need a motion to approve the grant application for $5,000 for the porch and eaves trough repairs. Does somebody wish to make that motion?
So through the chair, the motion on this because the eaves trough is also connected to the neighbor, we've added just a little bit to the motion just to cover that there won't be any impacts to the neighbor, but it doesn't sound like that will be the case. So the motion says that the SCHAC approve the grant application for 110 Queen Street for $5,000 for porch and eaves trough repairs, with the condition that the grant will not be provided unless it is shown that the eaves trough repairs will not negatively affect the drainage on the neighboring property. And that's just there to make sure that we don't improve one side, but potentially have some issues on the other. So it doesn't sound like that's going to be the case, but it's just there to cover that. So we just need somebody to make that motion.
Make it, Holly.
Holly, okay, thank you.
James, I have a question now that you have that up. If that's okay if I can ask it. How are we going to show that it's not going to affect the neighboring property?
So the owner will work with Lauren to make sure that once the work is complete, Lauren will go and confirm. She'll go out to the site and make sure that the work was done as described, and that doesn't appear that there are any issues. So so that would be our way of checking.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Mark, you have a question?
Yes, I have one more question. Just to be clear on something, you're still having one, it's going to be replaced as it is with the downspout on 110, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Downspout into the collector box that's existing.
right, okay. Thanks.
Okay, so
Just to
Holly
make
made,
something- Sorry to
No, go
interrupt.
ahead.
To make
Go ahead.
something clear. Currently, there are seams on the eaves trough. The proposed method of installing the new eaves trough is seamless with corners soldered.
so Holly made the motion. So all in favor? Okay, done.
Great. Thanks, Sally. And Lauren and I will be in touch with you tomorrow or early next week with next steps.
Okay, thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Have a good meeting.
Okay, thanks. Moving on to item 7.2, 33 Bayview. We have a proposed demolition.
Yeah, so through the chair, so I believe the owners, Jürgen and Dana, are here. I don't know if their architect is here. I'm not sure.
Oh, good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be here, but I guess not. So I'm not sure what happened with Carlos.
That's okay. Jürgen, you can go ahead when you'd like. I unfortunately have a couple different tabs open, so if there's a particular screen that you'd like me to go to start, please let me know.
Okay, yeah, all right. Thanks for meeting with us again. I know it's been quite some time since we met the last time, but it's just been a busy summer. We've actually been away for the last couple of heritage meetings. Anyway, I guess the last bit of business, you had requested us to get a quote on the actual rebuilding of the existing house that's there, and we had a little bit of difficulty finding someone, but we actually got a quote from the Joe Murray, who Mark had recommended to us, and so his quote came in. I believe you have it there. We sent it in. Was for $117,000. And that is, and basically what he was going to do there was dismantle the house, from my understanding, and then just rebuild each of the wall and replace the rotten wood with new wood, and then move it onto the new structure at a cost of $117,000 plus taxes. We actually got our framers that we have used a few times, like for example, they framed Shelley and Johnny Wall, and they gave us a quote to actually build the same structure with walls, the floors, and at $14,000. So there's a huge difference in the cost to actually keep old rotten wood as opposed to using brand new code compliant material. And the next thing we also did, we had an environmental specialist in just to do a report, and you can see from the report here that 75% of the wood that was exposed is actually has been affected by mold and whatnot. And he also said there is a good chance that they used creosote on some of the sills just as a preservative and pesticide. And so, we're worried about spending $117,000, and then we still have parts of the supporting structure that has mold and possibly creosote in it.
Yeah, and on top of that, even if we do use some new wood, any of the wood that's infected, even if it looks okay, we have no guarantee that the mold will not infect the new structure that we build, and is of a great concern to us.
So as far as the initial plan, which has been approved, we do not want to change the plan or anything. We want to just stick with the same facade and the same look. So we're just looking to build it with all new materials.
Sorry, Dana, can you see the image that I have on my screen? I'm not sure if
so this was, so I guess what we're just showing here is that the house to the right, which is 37.5 Bayview, which is very similar to 33 Bayview, was torn down. And the home that was put up in this on 37.5 was a modern McMansion that doesn't, in my opinion, fit with heritage and what I like to see in Port Dalhousie, because I believe that we have the same mandate that we want to make sure that what's built in Port Dalhousie looks like it would have been in Port Dalhousie. So obviously the plan that we have been approved from the heritage is exactly that. It's going to look exactly like 33 might have looked back in the day, but with to code and in a good structure.
And healthy.
And a healthy structure for sure.
No, I guess the last point that was, or last meeting was brought up, you wanted us to show a financial undue burden, and we believe 117,000 compared to 14,000, and we're still going to have at the end of the day the same approved structure. I feel 100,000 plus is an undue burden. And even with that 117,000, once that was with the bottom floor exposed with the plaster and lath being pulled off the walls, well, that was not exposed on the second floor, and so there could be more damage up on the second floor that we're not even aware of once we actually start opening it up. And as one other point, Joe had also said when he had looked at it, the only thing that's keeping up that front part of the structure, what was it, 17 by 24 or whatever, is actually the back portion of the building. Once that back portion actually comes down, that's basically what's holding up or keeping the rest, the front portion of that house erect. And we had most of you through for a site visit, and it was quite evident of the rot and decay that is present in that home. So we just feel it's better just to build with all new construction materials. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Maria?
Thank you. I'll take another look at both of those quotes, but just off the top of your head, can you tell me really briefly, in a way that I'll understand, what the main difference is in those two quotes? One is for 117,000 and the other one is for 14,009. How do you account for the differences there? I'm just taking a look at both of those quotes now.
So the $117,000 is basically to keep the existing building that is there, the original structure, and replacing the studs and posts that are there that are too rotten to actually keep.
Oh,
Yes, whereas the $14,000 is the same structure, but with all brand new walls, floors, the whole 9 yards. And that $14,000 is also including the building materials.
So that's just to show how cost prohibitive it is to keep the old structure with the old wood. It's going to cost almost $100,000 more to keep the old wood in comparison to doing it all with brand new materials.
And in the end, it's still the same
structure.
Same structure.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark?
Yes, thanks, Brian. As far as I understand that 117, because it says it's resetting, it was to move it to your proposed site.
Yep, correct.
Right. So that's moving the entire building
Okay.
and resetting it as well, not just framing. So there's more to that than
Yeah,
that, right?
just that Joe said that the structure has to be moved irregardless of wherever it is, the house has to be lifted and moved in order to have a basement poured and then the structure built on top. So whatever happens, that's just part of the process of rebuilding this structure. It has to be moved. You can't get around that.
And we're still going to have, contaminated wood, even because I know Joe, what did he shows about 15 to 20% has to be.
He said 25% new wood. I mean, somewhere in it says 25% new materials or something.
Floors, parts of the second floor, approximately, 15 to 20%. So there's still going to be a lot of the old molded wood left in behind the walls of the structure. And yes, that is part of moving it, because he's got to basically take the whole house apart wall by wall.
So what's the crane cost for that?
This is Joe's quote. This is with the crane and everything.
So that's the cost to maybe get him. So that's not an accurate one. You're not moving.
This is
the
what
house
he gave
anymore?
us to set the new house as well.
To lift the house in situ and reset it, not to build each wall up from scratch.
You would have to do that based on the structure quality.
That's right.
He has to take it apart regardless because it is in such bad shape. It's like a puzzle. It will have to be taken completely apart and put back together. Regardless
of if it's in situ or in situ, it still has to be moved regardless. They got to pick it up and taken apart.
I'm just trying to understand that large cost for a crane if you're just taking it apart and rebuilding it.
It's still, regardless, to do that work, it's almost $120,000, and I suspect that would probably go up as well once they actually start taking the plaster and lath and the exterior sheeting off the building. I'm sure there's going to be more damage than what we actually see right now.
And I feel like we can't lose sight of the fact that this is infected wood. I mean, at what point do we, what is our goal here? What are we saving if what's there is not healthy and it's an environmental hazard? I have a condition called Lewis-Dietz syndrome, which makes me highly affected to any sort of environmental toxins. I can go into a long history of but it makes me extremely sick to the point where I had a ruptured brain aneurysm because of being infected by mold in the past. So I plan on living in this home. So I have a disability, which I can't be in a moldy home. So that is my biggest concern for this house. I mean, the cost on top of it is ridiculously prohibitive. But to me, as the individual living in the home with my 4 children who also have this connective tissue disorder, genetic disorder, I'm losing sight of the ball here. I don't want us to lose sight of the ball of what we're gonna have at the end is a beautiful structure that we've all agreed on. And what our mandate is to make it look like it looked before.
Thanks.
So if you're going to be demolishing the current building and building a new one, is it going to be built on the footprint of the existing structure, or is it going to be pushed back in the lot?
It's going to be pushed back as what we, I guess, 2 heritage or 3 heritage meetings ago. It's the same plan. It's new building materials.
And it will be, if you look at 35, also 37 and a half, what is it?
Yeah, 37.
37 and a half, it's also been pushed back.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I thought, if you're demolishing them, there's no reason why, the new build couldn't go on the same footprint. But if you're pushing it back, I guess that's okay.
Well, there will still be the setbacks and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments about the proposal? And if not, I guess we need to have a motion to approve the demolition of 33 Bayview.
Yeah, I will put a motion up on the screen. Just 1 second. So the motion is a very basic one, that the SCHAC recommends approval of the proposed demolition of 33 Bayview Drive. Just a reminder as well that this will go to council for final approval or denial, and the recommendation of the committee will be in the staff report to council. Lorraine has a question.
Sorry, just before we go any further, then James, I'm wondering, through you to the chair, I'm wondering if we need to put more in this, because right now it just sounds like we accepted the demolition off the top as a as a request, when we know that we've gone through looking at different possibilities and wondering if a different possibility. So so that when they first, for example, when they first bought the house or bought the property, did they not know that it was going to have this kind of a damage? So remember the different conversations that we've had in the past. So I think that we need to indicate some of that. That's my prerogative anyhow, that we indicate some of that in this motion, if possible.
Can you elaborate what you're looking for?
Yes.
Lorraine, would this be
Okay, go ahead.
something, so for example, the approval of the proposed demolition of 33 Bayview, having explored opportunities for retention, for suitable retention. I'm not sure exactly how we would end that, but
yeah, I don't think we need to put all the details down. Like we did have a discussion at the beginning, did you know it was going to be like this when you first bought it? All the ideas about what else could be done. So we had all kinds of conversations. This isn't just okay, yes, you can have the demolition. It's been, explained to us why you need the demolition. And so that's why I'd like to see something in the proposal.
And
so
sorry,
I'm not sure.
It was a progression. Even from when we first bought the property, we figured, there would be some damage. But then once we had the property and opened it up a little bit, we started finding damage. And then once we really opened it up, you could see just how bad it was. And, we didn't have any idea that it was that bad because, of course, you can't see behind the walls.
And we have bought other Lucy, like 51 Bayview we kept it original, and we were able to completely rehab that house, and we're happy with it. But yeah, this one, I mean, we're doing round up backhands for try to make it work, and it's just not. It's obviously not happening.
And so my comment wasn't to make you go through that again, to explain your comment. My comment was just that rather than just saying, yes, it can be demolished, because we've all talked about demolition by neglect and how important it is to stay away from that if we can. We want to make sure that it's in the recommendation that we inquired further. We had you investigate more things. So I think having explored opportunities for suitable retention, but unable to find a suitable solution due to the building's condition, at least satisfies that in my eyes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Lorraine.
Gail?
I just think the council should know when this goes to them, sorry, through you, Brian. We should say we have had now 3 meetings about this, this is.
Yeah,
our
through the chair,
final-
I will make sure that the staff report explains the process and how we got to this point.
Okay,
We
okay.
always try to do that anyways, but I'll make sure
just
that.
want to make sure that they know we've spent a lot of time on this.
We
Yeah,
appreciate,
no, we certainly make sure that that's explained in the report.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
James.
and we appreciate your time. And, of course, if it gets to that, and we will be more than happy to have members from City Council out for a site visit as well. I think a site visit, a picture's worth 1,000 words, I guess.
Andrew?
I just wanted to make a point for the record more than anything else. We referenced a couple times the previously approved design and so on, and that design was approved with the understanding and really on the condition that the effort was being made to preserve the house. So the approval of that other design really isn't relevant today. Once the preservation of the house goes out the window, the design goes out the window in my book. But what it really is at issue is whether there's an undue burden here to try to preserve the house, whether it's a reasonable expectation of the homeowner. And I think there's really too much damage here, probably based on the evidence you presented, to say that preserving this house is worthwhile. So I would be inclined to support the application with the understanding that it's got nothing to do with the previously approved design. It's entirely based on the undue cost of trying to save this building. So it's a small distinction, but an important one because of the precedent that's happened in the past.
And it does show that you've done your due diligence as well, that we haven't just rushed into approving it.
Yeah.
Maria?
Yes, thank you. I think at the end of that sentence, it might be helpful to add including the negative environmental assessment report, or words to that effect. Regarding the building materials, or however you wish to phrase it. It's just my suggestion. If anyone else thinks that might be redundant or focusing on an aspect that doesn't hold as much weight as Andrew's point about the prohibitive cost. For me, they are 2 major factors.
So does this work then? Due to the building's condition, including the environmental assessment showing the building's negative environmental condition, i.e. mold.
Yes.
Okay.
James, I think it goes back to my original point of that we need to show that it's not just an agreement to demolition. And so I think all of the things that you have there are great at explaining that and providing the background. So I think that it works.
Okay, thanks, Lorraine. So we need somebody to make this motion then.
Lorraine?
Okay.
I saw your hand go up first. So all in favor? Okay, done.
Okay, so Jürgen and Dana, I'll be in touch tomorrow and we can talk about next steps. This will be going to council. Unfortunately, the earliest I can get it onto a council agenda is November 4th, I believe. But I'll chat with you tomorrow about that.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Can I ask something, Brian?
Yep, go ahead.
It was just similar, like we did a house like that on Brock Street where the conditions weren't favorable for their basement, and the mold and the damaged basement where they had to rebuild. Should we put anything in that motion about they are going to be building a new home, or that's not necessary?
So through the chair, they have approval already to essentially build the previous home that they they came to council or came to our committee for. If they wanted to not pursue those plans, they would have to come back to the committee and get approval. And so right now, currently though, they have an approval in hand, essentially, and so it sounds like they have the intention of following through with that. And so I mean, we can cross that road when we get to it, but essentially, if they want to deviate from that, they would have to come back here as well.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 7.3, 153 Main Street.
David has his hand up actually, just
Oh.
before we start.
Yep, go ahead.
Let me make myself clear. No, I think one thing, I vote in favor of the demolition, but I think that the older the house in Port Dalhousie, the more valuable it is, mostly. And I think the older the house is, the greater the chance of the smaller the chance of not finding mold. I think mold will be everywhere. And so it's just an interesting problem. I don't have a solution, but and in this case, because she had a specific extreme sensitivity to environmental things, I went along with it, but I was somewhat uncomfortable, just for the record.
Lorraine?
I would agree with you, David.
Thank you.
And I would too.
Yeah, through the chair, that was probably one of the most challenging applications I think we've had since I've been here. So certainly can understand that for sure.
Okay, so item 7.3, 153 Main Street.
So I believe the owner should. I think Josh Carr is here.
Yep.
So the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking a look at our application here. We've lived in this house since about 2015. Growing family, and we're looking to add some more space out back for some bedrooms upstairs. Keeping most of the house the same. Just looking to add porch and space out back. The whole piece out back was an addition in the 80s. So it'll need to have the roof taken off and then floor joist put in. But other than that, and adding some lights and windows to the front, not changing a whole lot. We will be looking to change all the siding. Probably looking at like a cement board siding as opposed to like the white aluminum we've got. But other than that, that is basically what we're looking for.
Do we have questions, comments? None whatsoever. That's amazing. Lorraine?
Okay, so this isn't really a comment or a question. It's a dilemma. I taught an Ashley Frank, and so is she from St. Catharines?
She was from Kapuskasing originally, but moved to St. Catharines.
Okay, so I don't know. Does that make it, James? Does that make it a conflict or not?
Through the chair, I don't know if it's technically a conflict, but if you also don't feel comfortable voting, you are welcome to abstain if you'd like.
Okay.
For that purpose.
Thanks. It's not a negative, Josh, at all. I'm just saying I want to be careful.
Oh, fair enough.
Thanks, James.
So this was Dr. Bergen, go ahead.
No, just I think it's a reasonable request. It's subordinate to the rest of the house. It's behind the house. It's not going to affect the streetscape, and I have no particular problem with what I'm seeing.
So this was having dormers put on that are not on it now.
There's gonna be bedrooms there, so we'd like to have some light coming in from the street on the front.
Okay.
Oh, I missed the fact that there were dormers coming on. Pardon me.
Yeah, so through the chair, there's the alterations are essentially the dormers that are added to the second floor. There's a porch expansion across the width of the front, which currently there's a small porch basically just centered basically where this gable is. And then there's a rear addition just to the second floor of a previously existing one-story rear addition.
I was looking at the rear addition, not the rest of it, but
you can see this is the facade here. And so there currently is a porch basically over the center portion here, or under the center portion, and then they'll be extending it out on either side essentially, along with implementing some dormers.
Yeah, I didn't know if dormers are going to be a sticking point or not, because I don't think we've have really sanctioned them at all times in the past, but
We've
I
had
mean,
through the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I mean, they certainly make the front of the house up.
Through the chair, we have had on Main Street, I believe it was maybe 123 Main Street. It was a couple years ago. We had somebody who essentially wanted to do a rear addition, and on the second floor, they wanted some more room essentially because of the slope of the roof, it kind of made half the house really unusable from a space perspective inside. So we did permit a front dormer there, but it's not too often that we get front dormers, I think, before the committee. So that's the only example I can think of.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about the proposal? No. I guess we need a motion to approve the additions or the
Rachel has
alterations.
her hand up.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. I just have a question about the windows on the dormers. I assume they're going to have a similar look. I don't know if that was addressed in the summary, but will they be of a similar design to the windows? I'm just looking at like the Google Street View of the house to see what it looks like now, and I'm just assuming that they look quite similar in the sketch. So I was just curious if they're going to. I meant specifically at the front where the dormers are going to go. Those windows similar.
Yeah, the windows in the front, we can pretty much match them. They have the I don't know what you want to call them, like the where it looks like they have panes in them.
Right.
So yeah, that wouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thanks. That's all I was curious about.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the alterations?
So through the chair, it's hopefully now on the screen that the SCHAC recommends approval of the proposed alterations to 153 Main Street.
Thank you. And I saw Dr. Bergen's hand go up first, so I suppose all in favor of the motion? Okay, done.
Great, thanks, Josh. I'll be in touch tomorrow with your heritage permit.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Chugging right along, item 7.4, 89 Bayview. And I guess Michael is here. Hello. Razzle dazzle us.
Apologies, I'm just pulling up the plans, Michael.
And I'm the owner of 89 Bayview. My name is Alexandra, so I'm here as well. Just to say that I've recently purchased the property at 89 Bayview, and I'm returning to Niagara after living in Toronto for a couple of decades. My mom is nearly 80, and so I am adding some space to the house in order to be able to allow her to come and live with me at some point in the future when she's ready. She's also a resident of Port Dalhousie. She lives on Dalhousie Avenue. And so that's the primary purpose of the renovation. And Michael is the architect that is working with me on the project. And I'm an interior designer professionally. So that's my...
Michael, do you want to run through some of the changes that are being proposed?
Sure, no trouble at all. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I guess we would just perhaps start with the site plan, James?
Sure.
I think we also have a photo, Michael, of the existing conditions as well.
Yeah, and we have the drawings as well. I'm just hoping to start with just the overall to orient people. There is an existing one-story dwelling on the house that has a sort of mud laundry connection to an existing attached garage. However, in in expanding the size of the house to accommodate the various program elements of Alexandra's, it's necessary to put an addition on. However, as the committee is aware, any new additions have to abide by the new zoning requirements. So therefore, the garage and the rear addition that is proposed is slated to move to the left, if I can call it that, more towards the downtown core without the drawings pulled up yet. Hence to provide the 1.2 meter side yard setback. In configuring and looking through options, we exhausted quite a few with Alexandra. Thank you for that, James. If you have your cursor, there's an existing house more or less in the center there. And the proposition is to reset a new entry with a entrance foyer, mudroom connecting it to an attached garage, and then a one-story addition in the back. And looking at various options with Alexandra, we spent quite a bit of time on the roof configuration, but because of the geometry of the footprint, any resulting slope roof became oh, thank you. There, that just gives an overview, James, of the existing condition. It's a fairly low house. Some of the areas of the existing house have ceilings that just exceed 7 feet. Not all areas, but some of them. So the condition of the mudroom and the laundry as it exists, it's proposed that they be removed and then rebuilt to align with the new zoning with the one-story addition in behind. We looked at several configurations, and what happened is every time we developed the geometry or the massing of the resulting building, it became very high, and the presence of the roof just dominated everything. So we developed this 3-volume approach that might be best seen, James, through the 3D images.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to make you, that's a great one, thank you. So the house is the volume on the left, a gable approach that is separated from the garage, also a gable approach, and is separated by a flat roof area, and the gable is then reintroduced on the addition on the back of the house. Providing the flat roof area allows us to break it all down into a very sort of much more human scaled, much more intimate, yet provides some degree in the increase of height to combat the house on the left. James, I thought Alexandra sent an image just to show the differential so the committee's aware between the height extremes of what the current.
Sorry, you have to bear with me. I've been having some technical issues today, so that's why.
That's okay.
Usually more prepped.
And so we've broken it down as indicated into a series of volumes, placing the rear addition and the garage addition to conform with the zoning, placing them in a subordinate manner where it's recessed from the front of the house, and then placing the main principal part of the addition at the back, a lower volume, subordinate to the main house itself. And in my Schedule A on the application, I went through to a fair degree of detail. Thank you for that, James. Fair degree of detail of how this new approach complies with the Heritage District guidelines. As you can see, the house to the left, the salt box volume, really dwarfs the subject property, and even the bungalow to the right has a considerably taller roof. And so we're trying to get a little bit more presence on the street, and we're adding the addition, but we're trying to do it in a very sympathetic way, leaving the garage where it is, leaving the driveway where it is, and so forth, and replacing the mudroom entry there. As I mentioned, there's low ceilings involved in the existing house. It became apparent after the purchase of the house that, and sorry to say this, Alexander, but it was rat infested. and there was hazardous materials that Alexandra's just had removed through appropriate hazmat remediation and disposal of those materials. So that kind of brings us to where we are today. Thank you, James. Or sorry, I should say Brian.
Okay, any questions about the proposal so far? Gail? You're on mute.
Yeah. If I'm looking at it correctly, the front door is right in the center, the original one, and you have a little porch up to the front door. This time in this, what we're looking at now, the main entry to the older house is on the side. Is that's it, right? And the whole front of we'll have just 3 windows and flower beds and what have you, and the entire porch will be taken off. Is that correct?
Yes, the porch will be removed,
Okay.
and we're giving prominence to the new entry to the house,
right?
Where the current sort of side entry is
Yes.
at the mudroom and so forth.
Right. Okay.
We're trying to give it a little more presence
Yeah.
With that.
Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
And through the chair, I'll just add, so this is the current building that's there is a non-contributing building within the Heritage District. I think if it was a contributing building, this would be looked at much differently. It would have much different guidelines that it would have to follow, and likely in this state wouldn't be able to be approved. But because it's alterations to a non-contributing building, there is a lot more flexibility in terms of what's permitted. There's actually very few guidelines for the most part, actually, for non-contributing buildings. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you, James.
Lorraine?
Okay, that really explains it then, James, because I was going in the same direction as Gail to say that the front is changing dramatically. And I know we always try and keep the front at least, as similar as possible, but because it's a non-contributing house, I see why we are more permissible. Okay, so my question is removed.
And might I add, if it's okay, that the house was built after the critical 1950 construction date, and its windows, its siding is vinyl, for example, which are not sort of historically compatible materials, and hence why the shingle approach is being developed to bring in more natural elements at this point in time.
Dr. Bergen?
Oh, I just want to thank you for the 3D rendition. That was so much better than the 2D renditions. I was having trouble picturing it, but once I saw the 3D, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, there are a couple more, James, that that were submitted. I don't mean to stretch your. You're becoming.
I'm happy to share. You put in the work. I'm happy to show off.
Clearly shows the 3 volumes and the flat roof that allows us to drain the flat roof in multiple locations. This is turning it from the the front left corner. And then there is one from the rear that shows where the existing house and the new addition, how they'll marry with an open patio area in the back of the house. Again, the addition has been done to maintain the large mature tree in the back, and there's actually one just in the front of the house, and that is being maintained as well.
I was actually hoping we could just pause on these perspectives for a moment, if you don't mind, because I think they show just that the scale of the house isn't really changing that dramatically. And just sort of the overall front aesthetic is, I think, easier to see here than it is easier to perceive in the axonometric views.
And I think that's an important point, Alexander. Thank you for bringing that up. Is in this view particularly, you can see how subordinate the rear addition becomes when it's pushed back and separated from the main house, so that the geometry of the original house's footprint is sort of carried forward.
And I think that the spirit of the existing home is still maintained, in the sense that there are these 3 volumes, So there's the volume of the existing house and the volume of the mudroom that was sort of tacked on to the existing house at a later date. That mudroom just sits on a concrete slab currently. And then the garage itself is, very much similar to what is already there. However, as Michael mentioned earlier, it's moving towards Port Dalhousie just to observe that setback rule.
Andrew?
I agree. I think we need more 3D representations like this because you get a much better sense of the impact of the changes than you do with a simple elevation. So thank you for providing those. Thank you also for protecting that beautiful mature tree in the backyard. It's always welcome to see that happen. To me, this is a really thoughtful and interesting approach to accomplishing what you want to accomplish. I like what's been done here. It looks great to me.
Thank you. Yeah, the tree was a big selling feature, to be honest.
Maria?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say I really like this design. I find it quite exciting. And on a purely subjective note, Alexander, I applaud you for potentially incorporating some living space for the future for your mom if that's her decision. But overall, it's a really nice design.
Lorraine?
I was going to say the same thing, Maria. Like as a daughter of a 97-year-old mom, I think that's amazing that you're redesigning this house and it's gorgeous. And I assume that your mother will be on the main floor or the on floor. This house have a basement?
It
Does it
does.
have
It does have a basement, yeah, but my mom will be on the main floor in the addition.
Good. Well done.
Jim,
I'm just gonna say thumbs up, and I thumbs up. I think it's a great design.
and both bedrooms, James has a main floor plan. Both bedrooms are located in the addition at the back of the house. So they have, can visually enjoy the backyard and the tree. And the sort of common bathroom is set up in a very similar to an ensuite in the secondary bedroom that James has his cursor on. So we've got a roll-in shower and so forth for her mother in the future.
Yeah, I sort of I like the design as well. The only thing that struck my my thoughts when I first saw it was that flat roof, and I thought I don't know of any house that has a flat roof that hasn't had a leak in it. So hopefully you won't have any problems with that.
Well, there are just countless commercial buildings all over the city that have flat roofs that do not leak. So if it's built well, it should not leak.
Right.
But I understand the caution.
Right. Okay, so if there's no further questions, I guess we need a motion to approve the alterations to the house.
Yep, the motion is on the screen so that the SCHAC recommends approval of the proposed alterations to 89 Bayview.
James, should that say addition and alterations?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Sorry, I'm not trying to.
Nope, that's doesn't hurt to add that.
Okay. So does somebody want to make the motion?
Yep.
We all do.
I saw Maria's hand go up first.
I'd be happy to make that proposal.
So all in favor? Okay, done.
Thank you
Great.
all so much. Thank you for your time.
very
Thanks,
much.
Alexandra and Michael. I'll be in touch tomorrow and with your heritage permit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
all be driving by, Alexandra.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And we'll all be wanting to use the back patio too. Moving on to item 7.5, 11 to 13 Paxton. This is, I guess, moving the house from one lot to another.
Yes, so through the chair, let me just get the plans up on the screen. And apologies that it's taking me a little longer than usual.
Brian, do you wish in the interim for me to say a few comments, or I'm happy to proceed however you would
Oh,
wish?
sure. If you want to start, go right ahead.
Okay, I see that Worldwide Charters is here. They don't have their video turned on, but the owners.
Michael, I'm here
Oh,
too.
there they are. There they go. Okay, so Sandra and Scott are the owners of 2 adjacent properties on Paxton Avenue. And thank you to James for popping up the site plan. So on the left, just where to the left, under part 2 is 11 Paxton. And closer to the lake on the right is 13 Paxton. Now, there is an existing 1.5-story building on 13 Paxton, and the owners own both properties. And I'm going to read a little bit from our Schedule A that formed part of this heritage application. In essence, the NPCA has indicated to Sandra and Scott that given the fact that the stable slope runs underneath and beneath the existing house at 13 Paxton, the entire building is potentially susceptible to hazard. This comes from the wording from the NPCA. And you'll also note, and maybe James, you could point out, that there's a deck structure and there is a retaining wall at the back of the structure and so forth. The existing residence's porch, detached open deck structure, and block retaining walls have structural complications and deficiencies due to the slope creep that need to be addressed. Sandra and Scott have been advised to remove those portions of the existing deck and retaining walls which are beyond their property limits. In doing so, and complying with the NPCA's request to remove them, this will destabilize the bank even further and accelerate the rate of scope creep. So now the house, which has this top of embankment running through it, which is currently destabilized, will become even more problematic in the future. And the cost to remediate the existing foundation and the relating elements of the house, it's just cost prohibitive at their current location. And to stabilize the embankment, it's just not a practical solution for this house. So given that Sandra and Scott are strong supporters of maintaining the house and preserving its heritage qualities, given that they own 11, the proposition is to shift the house from 13 to 11. But in doing so, they would rotate it 90 degrees so the front of the house addresses Paxton Avenue. And what you have shown with the hatched perimeter is the house rotated 90 degrees on the new lot location. Having said that, the house does not quite, there's the back of the house. As you can see it's rather plain and underassuming. So if it was just slid back on Peel Street, you're not going to have an attractive facade, and the front glassed area would face the 13 Paxton. So the proposition is to rotate it and remove it. Now, if you could go back 1 second, James, there is a very small, to the image you just had. On the far left, there is a very small side entry to the house. When we rotate and move it, that does not fit within the zoning regulations. So the proposition is to remove that. Just that one element only. And in doing so, we would place the existing house on a new foundation with a new stair down to the basement. So it would sit atop a new foundation and in its existing state. This approach works in concert with the conservation intent and guidelines of the Heritage District to preserve the house in its entirety, with the exception of that small side entry, which would have to be removed to align with the zoning requirements as they exist on 11 Paxton. Thank you.
Thanks. Do you have questions or comments about the proposals? Mark?
Yes, thanks, Brian. So I'm thinking about 33 Bayview when I'm looking at this, right? We don't know what's behind the walls right now for it to be moved efficiently, cost effectively. And the condition of the framing, like we wouldn't have known with Bayview, they wouldn't have known in Bayview. And unless they open up the walls right now to see how feasible it is, I'm not sure what to do here, because we just voted in favor of 33 Bayview's application. When I'm kind of wondering, like, well, what if there's mold now, right? I mean, did we, like, how much mold is too much mold for mold remediation too, right? So these are all the questions that are coming up right now, if anyone wants to.
Sure. And through you, Mr. Chair, if that's acceptable. Thank you for the questions, Mark. As part of this submission, James had asked for confirmation that it was the house was of sound condition to facilitate it being moved. And Sandra and Scott retained a moving company to take a look at the house structurally, and they provided a letter of confirmation that not only can it be moved, but it also can be rotated as proposed. And that was presented to James, and I'm not sure whether or not, Mark, that made it into the package you have. But that has been looked at, and there is no mold as far as we can see at this point in time. So the sort of due diligence to look at the structural feasibility and practicality of moving it and the cost to doing so is already known to Sandra and Scott. It's dissimilar to 33 in that they're not proposing to demolish the house. They're proposing and in favor of maintaining the house and keeping the historical value of the house. And I frankly applaud them for doing so. I think it's great, rather than just saying, wow, the costs are too high. How do we get underneath this whole house and so forth? And here's a practical solution because they own both properties and they're side by side.
Yes, thank you. I did mention Bayview 33 just because they had applied to move it before the application to demolish. Yeah.
Yeah, so through the chair, it's a similar application in that it's a house being proposed to be moved. And originally the owners for 33 Bayview had good intentions to retain the house and move it. And it was only after and they had a structural assessment completed. And at the time that structural assessment showed that everything looked like it was okay. And I think the kind of trepidation that Mark has is just in 33 Bayview, they obviously had to come back because it turned out the structural assessment didn't cover the full extent of the issues that were there. So I think that's where the question comes from, Michael, if that helps to explain some context.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to say to Sandra, I see that your microphone is, you're muted, but if you wish to add anything, please, by all means, do so. I don't know if that was an indirect thumbs up there or not. It was fingers up anyhow.
Michael, I'll jump in.
Scott
speaking.
Okay.
Yeah. So we actually had two companies look at it, and two companies give us structural reports that it could be moved. We only submitted one of them, so we kind of did double the work. So we feel pretty comfortable that the house can definitely be moved and is structurally sound now that we've had two outside professionals look at it and basically come out and say, yes, it can be done.
Okay, Lorraine?
Okay, well, first of all, just on your last comment, I applaud you for getting, two quotes to make sure that it could be moved, because that was one of my questions. How do we know it's going to be moved successfully? But it sounds like the double quote is a little bit of reassurance anyhow. And definitely we know that from what you've given us that there is an erosion problem. So it's not as if something that you just, you want to move it for aesthetics or whatever. You're moving it because the erosion. The idea is the turning of it. And so that's where I need a little bit of clarity, because I'm wondering, James, if you could go back to the photo and show me on the photo how that works, because I could see it in the diagram. Although, like, it looked like Peel Street on the picture.
Yep.
And
So there is a small street right here. You can see it
That's
here.
what
It
I
almost looks like a
wondered.
driveway, essentially. But that is technically, I believe it's a street, and so you would turn it to have it face that.
So that's
That's Paxton Avenue,
Yeah.
James.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
And so you're moving it back and turning it
90 degrees.
90 degrees. And so the houses on both sides would remain as is. Did they have to get any of their neighbors okay for any of these or not? I'm just wondering, was it the distances or
The approval process, if I may, is a permit through NPCA. And NPCA has indicated they're in support of this, subject to a geotechnical report that when they move it from the site, that they would sort of do remedial work as much as possible. And Scott and Sandra are in the process of having that report done. Then there is the minor variance that's required, as well as your heritage permit. And this is the view is of I'll call it the back of the house. And on our elevations, James, we have the elevations of the sort of front of the house that would, once it's moved, would face the street. So there you can see on the bottom of the drawing, it says Paxton Avenue. The front porch and the windows and all of that will face Paxton, and that aligns with the site plan directly above it. And you can see the dotted line of where it was, and you can see the height and size and scale of the building beyond. So, it is smaller and subordinate to the house beyond, but we're rotating it would give a much more friendly streetscape to the more public part of Paxton, which is on that sort of unimproved road allowance. And it also means that there's more attractive side elevation facing Peel Street than just having that back, had it been just simply transposed and shifted without the rotation.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my question about the neighbors then. So the neighbors because they're going to be impacted, aren't they, by it moving? And what about the infrastructure? Does the infrastructure change in terms of, all the things that are underneath the house? Like, is there a basement?
So if I just might ask the question, when you say the neighbors, so if we're talking about the neighbors, we have Paxton Avenue, and then we have on the site plan showing, it shows 14 Paxton.
Right.
Right there. There's an entire municipal street in between them. So there's no impact to them, and they have the separating distance. The neighbor up at the top, there you go. We've outlined, they have just put in a driveway at the back where it says the word wood deck. And that existing is a one-story dwelling, and then there's the larger two-story 6 Macefield that's on the lake there. So yes, new services would have to be brought in to facilitate this. But it's my understanding that there were 2 buildings, because there were historically two properties. So there should still be the stubs for water and sanitary and so forth. But yes, they would have to be connected when the house is relocated and put up atop a new foundation and basement.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Bergen.
3 observations. One is I have lived on the edge of the lake for 46 years, having moved here back when one could afford to move into Port Dalhousie. Anyhow, and I've been slowly watching my backyard slump, so I'm enormously sympathetic to backyard slumping on the edge of the lake. The house that I'm in is probably 100 feet from the edge, and so I'm not worried about it at all. But if I were right on the edge, I would certainly have concerns about that. A second observation is that Port Dalhousie has a long history of houses being moved, and actually some architecturally significant houses have, over the years, prior to any of this, like probably in the 1800s, got moved all over Port Dalhousie. It was kind of just, moved houses. In fact, it's not clear that my house was built on this location. Some people have thought that maybe it was built somewhere else. I don't know. And the final thing is, if I were the neighbor to the west, not the one across the street, but the one on the other side, I would applaud this move because it would expand my view of the lake.
Yes, it would.
In a cottage, I'd be looking at the lake. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Maria?
Yes, thank you. Michael, have the owners, Sandra and Scott, given any thought, or are they concerned about the potential of mold in the house once they start investigating further?
It's a good question. Thank you. And I'll allow them to give their comments. All I'd like to say is that they currently use the house and sort of partially live in the house because they have a house in St. Catharines elsewhere, and they split their time and come for the lakeside beauty and so forth. So they're living in there, and there are no sort of visible elements of mold that would trigger suspicion. But Sandra or Scott, if you want to address that, that would be great.
Michael, I think you said it very well. We've been living there for 2 years. In fact, I've had my office there for 2.5 years, and there's no sign of mold that we can see.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I suppose my question comes from a caring concern for you, and sharing Mark's possible concern about the unknown costs, i.e. mold, and if that does turn up, how it might impact your plans entirely. I know I'm theorizing at this point, but that just occurred to me that it's a potential wrinkle in the scheme of things, but we can only work with what we know. How old is the house?
That's a good question.
I believe through the chair, I believe it's 1930-ish. It's give or take a few years, I think, on either side of 1930, but I can confirm that if you're curious.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second.
That's all right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mark?
Yeah, just to answer that question, I'm looking at the package that was sent for this, and it does show on a 1929 fire insurance plan that there is a house on this location.
Yeah, through the chair, it's 1927.
Okay.
It'll be 100 years in a couple years from now.
Maria?
Can I ask another quick question? I don't mean to belabor the point, but is there a test or an assessment that a homeowner can do to determine if there is mold present?
You can answer that, Michael, if you know.
Well, if I may, there's invasive testing and non-invasive. So non-invasive is just simply going and doing a visual inspection of all the various parts, including the foundation and what one can see on the basement of the house. That said, you can always, should you wish, start to poke holes in all the various locations in the house where you might expect to find something like that. But then you're going to have to patch and repair them. So not too many people go to the extent of poking holes just to see what's there if there's no reason to do so. But having said that, as you've come across in countless examples in Portaluzzi, you never quite know what you're going to get until you
Yes.
get to that stage. And we've got our fingers crossed, but there's no guarantees.
Thank you.
Dr. Bergen. You're muted.
You're muted.
To return to my previous point, I don't think we're going to find very many houses that are more than 70 years old in Port Dalhousie that don't have mold in some corner or another. You know, so if any evidence of mold is a criterion for leveling a house, then we're all in trouble. But
Sure. And if I may, back then, I mean, they didn't have the high-tech air barriers and vapor barriers that we have now. A lot of the old homes in Port Dalhousie lacked insulation, even. They were seasonal dwellings that weren't set up for this, and you're in a lakeside, well, it's almost an ocean kind of seascape that, you know, the moisture is in the air. So it just comes along with old buildings. The same construction, if you were to build it today with the required insulation, air barrier, and vapor barrier, I'm sure 100 years later we wouldn't have those issues.
Okay, so there's no further questions or comments. I guess we need a motion to approve the relocation of 1113 Paxton.
Yep, so through the chair on the screen right now, it says that the SCHEC recommends approval of the proposed relocation of 11 to 13 Paxton Avenue. I also want to note to everybody, there's an odd quirk in the Heritage Act where when you remove a building from its actual property and move it onto another property, it technically is called a demolition. Obviously, there's no intent to demolish here, and that's why the motion is saying relocation, because we don't want it to make it sound like they're actually proposing demolition here. But it is a technicality under the Act, and so it will go to council for final approval. We ran into the similar issue with the jailhouse in Port Dalhousie, where they're proposing to move it from there to a new site, and so this is the same way that we address that. So it's just a technicality for everybody to be aware of. That's all.
So, does somebody wish to make this motion? Maria?
Yes.
And all in favor? Done.
Great. So Sandra, Scott, Michael, I'll be in touch tomorrow about the council meeting in early November. Unfortunately, that's the earliest I can get onto an agenda.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, moving on to 7.6, the downtown HCD update. James, take it away.
Yeah, so through the chair, so downtown HCD study is ongoing. Over the last month, just having still a lot of conversations, especially with downtown property owners and the BIA. I was chatting with our consultant yesterday, and they're hoping to have a first draft of the report completed in October, and hopefully it'll be in my inbox sooner rather than later. But I'll be able to review it and provide them with some comments, and then after that point, I will circulate it. Once we have a final first draft, I guess you could say, I'll circulate it to our group, obviously, and it'll also be circulated to the Downtown Heritage Conservation District Task Force members, and I'm sure we'll also circulate it to the BIA, and we'll post it publicly as well for people to comment on. So I'll keep everybody posted when I get that. This morning we had an information kind of a panel session held at the library. Andrew was one of the panelists, and he did really well. Basically, it was an opportunity for members of the public to ask people who have experience in heritage, ask them questions about their experiences and what they've gotten out of it, or what issues they've come across. And so we had somebody from the National Insurance Board was there. I've worked with him quite a bit when it comes to insurance issues. We had a downtown realtor / property owner. We had Michael Mirnick, who was just joining us. He chimed in as kind of an architect, and because he deals with the Heritage Committee quite a bit, just to provide kind of the perspective of how he deals with the city and deals with the Heritage Committee, and then obviously with Andrew and all of his experience with Heritage. So lots of interesting questions. I don't know if Andrew wants to chime in and let everybody know how he felt about it, but it was an interesting experience, and it's one of many kind of conversations and information sessions that we've been having, and hopefully we'll continue to have. Right now, it looks like the study we're targeting early next year for having it go to council, but in the meantime, we're going to keep having conversations with property owners and whatnot to just to understand concerns and see how we can address them going forward. Andrew, I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to provide anything, but yeah, that's the update about the Downtown Heritage District study.
I'll just give a very short overview of my impressions. It was there's some thoughtful comments. There's some people there who are having a lot of anxiety over the implications of this. Some of that's based in the standard misinformation about designation and what heritage designation means. I observed to James and also one of the counselors at the meeting that I got the impression that part of the issue is there's a frustration with the amount of regulatory red tape that needs to be addressed to build in the city or develop something in the city. And for a lot of people, this is, the straw that's going to break the camel's back. So unfortunately, a lot of the backlash, I think, is that this project is carrying a lot of the weight for that. But it was definitely interesting to hear what people say. There's a lot of thoughtful people and different opinions. But that's why I said off the beginning we got to be nicer to James, because I understand some of what he has to deal with sometimes.
Well, and through the chair, nobody, I completely understand, people don't want to have to go through unnecessary red tape, right? Like I think everybody can understand that, you don't want to have to make people jump through hoops that aren't necessary. I think we've done, our committee, I think, does a really good job of trying to make applications easy for people to get through the system and get through our process. I think also, our committee approved changes to the delegation bylaw last year or earlier this year, and that's really sped things up. We've actually been able to, for really minor applications, we've been able to approve them in as little as a day, which is pretty fantastic. I think there's not many things you can get approved in a day nowadays, and so. No, we've been doing our best to try to, ease those anxieties and make it clear that heritage doesn't need to be, a regulatory barrier for people, but it's just another thing that somebody has to jump through, right? So there's concerns about that. So yeah, Gil.
Quick question, how many people attended other than the panel?
There was probably at least 25, maybe. Mark was also in attendance.
That's all I want to know.
Yeah, there's probably about 25 people there, and then 4 on the panel.
Thank you.
Mark, I don't know if you had any thoughts on it, if you wanted to chime in as well. You don't have to, but you were in attendance, so.
Yeah, the people are passionate, that's for sure, on like for and against a heritage district down there. I realized that I need to speak more in public because I got very nervous and kind of almost forgot where I was at the time. But it's just I speak to people all the time, but in groups for some reason it's different. But yeah, I did have a question that I think it fell on maybe some deaf ears. It actually got a few of the audience members to just speak out without being called on. Not exactly sure what got them kind of riled up, but I did have a question about insurance and why older buildings are tougher to get insurance on or more expensive to get insurance on. And I think that it's a lack of education in repairing old buildings. Like we have older buildings that last hundreds of years, and we have buildings that are built in like 20 years ago that are falling apart, right? I think it's the knowledge of traditional building practices and materials used that will keep buildings lasting a hell of a lot longer than modern materials used on it that aren't compatible with the old building. Because I find in Toronto and in Montreal and Ottawa, maybe more so, Like they've got guidelines for historic buildings here. Anything south of Toronto, like it's the Wild West. So it would be nice to see some more guidelines on historic buildings, at least. That's all.
Thanks, Mark. The one thing I will mention is, yeah, the sentiment, especially in the sorry, excuse me, in the downtown, there's fair bit of opposition. A lot of people, there are kind of anxieties and fears and whatnot about what this means. I would also, I'd recommend if members of the committee want, are not asking anybody to stick their neck out or anything like that. But if there are members of the committee that feel strongly about the idea of a downtown heritage district, make sure that your voice is being heard as well. And if you know people as well that might have the same sentiments, let them know that this is happening and have them, provide input as well. Because right now we're getting a lot of negative input about it, not a ton of positive. And I think that it's just organization, basically. It's the people who are opposed to it are just better organized right now. And so it not forcing anybody to have to, but we are a heritage committee, and if the heritage committee feels strongly about it, then I'd recommend, being a little more, maybe not active, or just spreading the word essentially, and letting people know that this is something that's happening. That's all.
No, communication is key.
Mm.
Do you have the sense that maybe some of the people who were non-believers in what we're trying to do might be swayed towards, hey, this is a good thing?
Through the chair, I have my doubts that that's the case, because the people who are opposed have been opposed for almost since day one, especially the main people. So I have my doubts about that, but there can be people who just are waiting on the sidelines and don't want to chime in or don't want to say something that might ruffle feathers as well. So some people might be kind of hesitant to stick their necks out. So that could be the case. I don't know. Obviously, you don't know what people think if they're not actually actively sharing their thoughts, right? So it's hard to say. But I will say that we've had 2 rounds of surveys for the downtown. The first round that we had was overwhelmingly positive in terms of the way the city views the downtown. A lot, like probably about more than 80% of people that responded to our survey, and this was a citywide survey, said that they felt that the architectural character of downtown was really important. And so people like the downtown. Like, it's very clear that, across the city, people are proud of it and want to see it maintained. It's just the local property owners are concerned about what the impacts are to them if that were to happen, right? And so it calls into question, whose downtown is it, sort of, right? Is it the entire municipality's downtown, or is it just the people who have bought property and have been down there for a long time? And that's a really tough question to answer, right? Probably more so than any other. You can say Port Dalhousie belongs to that community and maybe isn't part of the grander kind of St. Catharines kind of geography, but the downtown is St. Catharines, right? And so everybody in the city has a connection to it. So it's a challenge, and I think it's something that once the study comes forward and with their recommendations, I think that's a question that council is going to have to grapple with in terms of whether they want to proceed and move beyond the study phase and move towards a plan.
Lorraine.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I remember a few years ago, I wrote an article for American Matters about why it was advantageous to become part of a heritage district, to have your house or your building declared a heritage home. I think I had some help from Brian and Gail to write that. So communication is key. So an article in the Standard, if that could be encouraged, or something downtown, I think that might be a bit helpful. And then a second note, over the Labor Day weekend, I was with some people who live downtown, and I will send you an email with some of the concerns they gave me. Might be different from the meeting, I'm not sure. Don't want to take up time for that. But yeah, I really want to sort of emphasize the idea of communication and the advantages.
Well, Lorraine, through the chair, I think the other issues that are downtown, I think everybody sees them, right? And we probably all know what some of those issues are, and they're unfortunate, and they're much bigger societal issues than what this little study can kind of tackle, right? And so I completely, I've had one of the comments that I've had from people is why are we focused on this when we have all these other things going on, right? And I completely understand that, right? And I don't think any of us would say that heritage is more important than those other issues, right? So, but at the same time, you know, we have the ability to do multiple things at least. You know, it's not just we can only tackle one thing at one time. You know,
Right.
we have multiple departments at this city, right? And the reason
Right.
why is because, you know, it's so that way we are able to address multiple issues. So, but that some of the issues that we're facing are also the same issues that almost every municipality in Ontario is facing, right? So it's a real challenge. It's and I completely understand where people are coming from.
Okay.
Thanks, James.
Yep, so if we've got no further questions about that, then I guess we need a motion to receive your update.
Yep, just a basic motion to accept the information from myself about the Downtown Heritage District study.
So does anybody want to make the motion? Gail, thank you. And all in favor of that? Okay. Moving on, item 7.7, new heritage planner introduction.
Yeah, so through the
I don't know.
chair, we have a new heritage planner to replace me. I will still be attending our meetings, and I'll still be in the background and whatnot and helping Lauren out. But Lauren is our new heritage planner as of last week, and she's already hit the ground running. She was the one that was very instrumental in the grant application that we had before us today, trying to navigate that situation between a couple neighbors. But I've had the pleasure of working with Lauren a few times now. We worked together at the City of Toronto and we worked together at ASI. And so I can vouch that she's really good at heritage and really happy that she's on board because it's nice to have basically two heritage planners on staff now to be able to address you know everything that comes up. So I mean I'll let Lauren kind of introduce herself and maybe we can do kind of a round of introductions for everybody so everybody can introduce themselves to Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Hear me okay? Um, hi, I'm Lauren. I am a heritage planner. I've been a heritage planner for the past 14 years or so. About half of my experience has been either through municipal heritage planning, and the other half through in the consulting world. I started off my career at the City of Vaughan, and also working, and then later working with James at the City of Toronto, and then went into consulting, working for a couple of heritage consulting firms and eventually engineering consulting firms. Have experience with both the Planning Act side of things and working with heritage committees such as yourself, and also more Environmental Assessment Act evaluation. So I have like a very broad experience in the heritage industry. I'm also originally from the Niagara area. I grew up in Port Colborne, Ontario, and of course, so St. Catharines has always been my city. It's where we went shopping and where we would go, to see a hockey game, and it's always been very, very near and dear to my heart. And so it's been really great the last couple of weeks to be working in a place that is so familiar and with a history that's so personal to me, and amongst people who almost immediately have welcomed me and accepted me as part of the community. So I've really enjoyed that, and great to be working with James. Again, we've worked together on and off, and we have a very say like we have very clear understanding of heritage, and really work together really well. So I'm just really excited about that. Yeah, and to work with you all, because I've heard amazing and good things about this Heritage Committee, having worked with a variety of Heritage Committees in the past, and seeing this meeting and how smoothly everything went, and just the amazing conversations that you all had and contributed, and so I'm really looking forward to working with you too. Yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. Do we want? I'll maybe just call people out. Is that probably the best way to go about it? And maybe we'll start with Brian.
Ooh.
You're the chair, so
yeah, sure. Yeah, well, I'm Brian, of course. I've been doing heritage-related research for about the last 45 years or so. I've worked for ASI since 2004, so 20 years at ASI. And I've been on this Heritage Committee almost that same length of time. I think I joined in about 2006 or something like that. So I'm an old professional.
Thanks, Brian. Gail?
Yes, I'm a former librarian, special collections librarian, which is local history, genealogy, history, and I am a writer. I publish an unwieldy number of articles on local history, heritage, genealogy as well, and many other things. And I'm a bit of a well-known political activist municipally without a party affiliation. I've made probably a dozen or more presentations to council for a variety of causes, social justice causes, other things and that. And I go to the library every week and I have huge stacks of reading materials. And I guess that's me. I would like very much for this meeting to continue long enough that we can talk about communication with the city, because that is really very important, that we communicate with each other and with the outside world. Brian and Lorraine and I belong to the Public Education and Outreach Committee, POE currently, and we discuss amongst ourselves the need for that to continue. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Gail. Maria?
Thank you. Hi, Lauren. It's Maria here. A very warm welcome to you. I don't have any noteworthy or sterling accreditations to my name, only a keen interest in history, local history, Ontario history. I volunteer in various organizations throughout, and my focus is women's history primarily, but have a strong interest in the built heritage. And I'm still learning a lot about St. Catharines. I've lived here for nearly 11 years and still finding my way around and discovering more about the place I call home. So I'm looking forward to working with you on the Heritage Advisory Committee, and welcome again.
Holly.
Welcome, Lauren. Nice to see you and meet you, and looking forward to working with you. I'm born and raised in St. Catharines, heritage lover. I love Nicholson and Macbeth and architecture. Just got involved with the Heritage Committee just due to a love of history. My history teacher was Frank Kaplan, and I think he drilled it in our heads about the history of St. Catharines and the heritage. Got involved with the Port Dalhousie District Heritage, and just love it. Love the committee.
Thanks, Holly. Andrew.
Actually, sent Lauren an email with a bit of an introduction a few days ago. We were talking about something else, so I don't know if I want to need to repeat most of that, but just welcome. Look forward to working with you and getting to know you better, and welcome to the city, or back to the area, I should say.
Great. Mark?
Hi, welcome, Lauren. I've been on the committee now. This is my second term. I also operate a masonry restoration business here in St. Catharines and all of Niagara region. I've been doing this kind of work for 20 years. I cut my teeth in a lot of historic buildings in Guelph and Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, and that kind of got me on that route with heritage. So that's like 95% of our work, if not more, right now. And it's been a pleasure being on this committee, and I'm looking forward to working with you as well.
David.
Hi, Lauren. Yes, David. I was born in Kitchener. Port Colborne is one of my favorite places outside of Port Dalhousie, where I live. And I moved to Port Dalhousie in 1978 when people felt sorry for me that I had to live in Port Dalhousie. And I thought, I just got an acre on Lake Ontario. And why are you feeling sorry for me? But I came from Kitchener. I didn't know any better. Anyhow, I've been enjoying heritage ever since. I've had a lot of fun restoring the house and getting involved with keeping Port Dalhousie. And now St. Catharines.
Rachel.
Hi, Lauren. It's lovely to see you and meet you in person. Like Andrew, I already sent you an email introducing myself. So for the sake of everyone, I'll just say welcome. And I'm relatively new. So like Maria, I'm I feel like I've learned more than I've contributed, I think, but it's been great. So looking forward to working with you.
And finally, Lorraine.
Oh, hi, Lauren. Welcome. I'm a retired elementary school principal and currently an instructor at Brock and Queens, teaching teacher pre-service. I love history and heritage as well. This is my second term. I think Mark and I joined at the same time. I write and edit the Meriton Matters newsletter magazine and have done so for like 23 years. And love to put the spotlight on Meriton because that's where I was born, that's where I grew up, and I've lived most of my life there. So be forewarned, I'll be digging for your Meriton connection soon enough. Everybody has to have some kind of connection to Meriton, so that'll be me digging for it. I've done a lot of work with Indigenous groups in the area. Working alongside to examine and write about their history and make sort of inroads at helping that become part of our school system. We're
Great.
looking
Thanks,
forward to
Lorraine.
working with you.
Could I interrupt and say that I am chairing a meeting tonight at the Museum on Indigenous History in Niagara. It's going to be a very challenging meeting because we have an AGM before it.
And I think it's a good time to also mention that Monday is Truth and Reconciliation Day. Obviously a very important day. And there's events. I'll forward an email to everybody with some events that are happening that are related to City Hall. But it's obviously a really important day, and something that we definitely probably don't do enough in terms of kind of reflecting on kind of the impacts that we've had on Indigenous peoples. And so it's good to have a day specifically where we can focus on that.
James, I have a question for you. I sort of goes to Gail's communication, but it also follows up on what you just said. I have some links I was going to put in the chat, notices about upcoming museum presentations on the Welland Canal. I don't know if everybody's seen that, plus what Brock is doing as far as the Welland, the 2024 anniversary of the, first shovel in the ground planning, signing for the Welland Canal. Brock is also doing something for that. So would you rather I put them in the chat or send them to you?
I would say send them to Lauren, since she'll
Lauren.
be.
Oh, sorry, Lauren. Yeah.
So send them to Lauren, and she'll circulate them to the group.
And people might
And
have already seen them, but just to make sure that everyone's aware that there are some special events coming.
And everyone is welcome to copy me on those emails to Lauren if you'd like, but really it is Lauren that's going to be taking the helm from here on out. So, and I'll still be in the loop and everything. But yeah,
I will be copying you and learn something later when we talk about communications. The presentation at the museum tonight is with the Historical Society of St. Catharines, of which I'm the current vice president.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And just to mention something in connection to what Lorraine was just saying, Adrian from the museum sent us an email with lectures that are coming up about the canal. So
did he send that to everyone, Brian?
I
that was
think
one
he
of the
did, but
links.
I think he did, but if not, I can forward to everybody.
Well, that was one of the links I just mentioned. So okay, so we'll send it to you anyhow, just in case, James.
And Lauren.
And Lauren. I didn't mean, I was going to send it to you.
You'll get used to me, I think.
Sorry.
Okay. I guess the introductions are finished, so quickly moving on to miscellaneous items. I had a couple of things I wanted to mention. If anybody's interested in the architecture and the history of Beaver Dams Church, Beaver Dams Church is going to be open this coming Saturday from 9 until 3, I believe. They've got an Apple Fest, so you can get everything Apple-y, but the church will be open, and I think they're giving tours of it. As for Mayhome, the work that they're doing there is progressing quite nicely. They're almost finished. At this point, they're just waiting for bookshelves to come in for the new library edition and a couple of other things. So they will be having full occupancy of their new research room / library fairly shortly. So that's good news for the people at Mayhome. And that's all that I had to say. Lorraine, you wanted to say something about the canals?
I did, and I have a short PowerPoint. I promise it will be short. James, will you pull it up?
Yep, just pulling it up now. Just 1 second.
So on Monday night, the historic Welland Canal task force came forward to the City of St. Catharines City Council meeting and presented the interpretation plan. And so what I've done is I've taken a few of the slides, changed them, just to give you a quick overview of what we talked about, and to make sure you're up to date on sort of where that plan is. And so these are the people who are on the Welland Canals Task Force. Renee and Kathleen did the presentation on Monday night. It was very well received. For example, Councillor Bruce Williamson was very positive about it. So you can change it, James, if you want. It's just sort of an overview of who's there. So we had a terms of reference. Brian was on the committee as well, and I know we've talked about it a bit before, but just to review, we were responsible for developing this interpretive plan. It was to be like a roadmap for upcoming celebrations of the historic Welland Canals and looking at 3 major significant milestones in the construction and operation of the canals. After some discussion, we originally were starting off with first and second, and then included the third Welland Canals into our terms of reference. So the terms of reference had to be rewritten. So basically, we're responsible for developing this roadmap that the city will use. It's not the committee will use it. The city will use for planning the 200th anniversary. So leading up to 2029. Okay, James? So these are the 3 dates that are significant. You know, we're all sort of aware of the history of the Welland Canals probably. So I just wanted to highlight these 3 dates. 1824, there are some events happening in October and November. Those are the links that I'm going to send to Lauren and CC James maybe, about the events that are coming up. So for example, I read, this wasn't something that was at the meeting, but I read that in Allenburg, the Thorold Heritage Committee is planning on November 30th, they're planning to recreate the celebration that happened in 1824 when there were apparently 200 people, not 3,000, 200 people that gathered there near the Allenburg Bridge to see the turning of sod. So I think they're planning something like that. And then I know that the museums are all planning something for to happen in November of this current year to celebrate what happened in 1824. And then, of course, 1829 is the first ships transiting the part of the Welland Canal. And it's the big date that our canal task force was charged with planning the roadmap to. And then there's 1833. Okay, James? So one of the things we were supposed to do as a committee was to look at what are the historical assets of the first 3 canals. But when we got together, one of the first sessions was Colleen Beer talking about her project that she had worked on. Colleen is a professor emeritus at Brock and her historic Welland Canals mapping project. And I think that Brian and I brought that mapping project to the group that was in term then as a heritage advisory committee and had people look at it. I'll give you the link for it as well. I'll send that to Lauren. But the historic Welland Canals mapping project is fantastic. If you haven't had a look at it, it's really a great way of looking at the sites that are still there, looking at the different remnants that are there, and looking at how we can understand the historic achievement of canals in St. Catharines, as well as we know that they're in other places as well, but really it's a great resource to use. Okay, James? So we had several priorities. Here are 2 of the main ones. We had to figure out what our suggestions were for preserving and improving the existing trail system and canal remnants in the city. We know that there are several different trails in the city, and people who use those trails regularly tell us that it can be confusing, and we need to think about how we can see it coming together. And so the trails were seen as one of the highest priorities of the committee, that we wanted to make sure that it's going to be a high priority destination, that it was going to be a tourist destination that would bring people to St. Catharines, and that was a really great way to see the remnants that are available. And then our second priority was to think about special events and activities. So we did a lot of brainstorming in our meetings about that. Activities that promote and celebrate that 200th anniversary. That's the one I had mentioned was really the kind of the key one that we were being directed towards. And so we thought that really the trail system, as I mentioned, that could be a huge factor. And Renee Resler, who is, I don't know if you have his Facebook site, that the Friends of the Welland Canal Systems, is amazing. So definitely something to look at. And he's always walking the trails and offering trail guidance as well. So that was a high priority. Oops. One back. Okay, so this was that idea about the trails and that we needed a consistent naming convention. And then to relate to what the Heritage Advisory Committee was doing, we've talked before about having common signage. There's signage already, but they're all varied. Some highlight different parts and not maybe some of the historic parts that we really want to stress. So I know Brian and I, as part of the committee, and James as well, we went through and looked at things that should be highlighted in this program and in this interpretive plan. So basically, we want to have a trail system that's more easy to use, that has great signage, that connects. And then the next slide, James, talks about the terminus of the Merritt Trail, that there's a proposal in the interpretive plan to extend the northern terminus of the Merritt Trail so that it includes more into Portaluzzi, and to tie some of those remaining features of the historic canals into the existing trail system. Lakeside Park was seen as a huge attraction, and how could that be gathered and put into, in a more significant way, into the trail system? So that was part of the interpretive plan suggestions as well. Okay. So this is the last slide, and it talks about the 4 phases of the plan. So basically, we were suggesting general ideas overall, and now it's the time for the city staff to actually get together as a working group. And that was the recommendation of the interpretive plan, that these phases aren't, separate silos where it'd be 1, then 2, etc., that they really sort of would overlap, and that there has to be groups working with this, whether they're community groups, whether they're staff, that it's a bigger project than perhaps maybe the city alone can do, because as well there wasn't any money in the current multi-year budget. So we have this plan, but no funds in the current strategic budget. So where's that funding going to come from? So staff has to look at where they can get that kind of funding, what kinds of support that they can get, and recommend what to do financially. So now what happened was at the meeting that council approved the plan in principle, but the plan now is in the hands of staff. And so staff will take it back, work through it, come back with some ideas for operating budgets, for what we can do. And so basically, it ended as a plan that will be cross departments from the staff, and that the 2029 Historical Welland Canals Committee has done its job, and it's concluded because it submitted this interpretive plan that was approved in principle on Monday night. So in conclusion, we all know that the 200th anniversary is a huge event and that it affected the city economically, the building of the canal, the industries that came, the people that came to work there. It had a huge effect on the city of St. Catharines, and I should say Meryton in a parochial way. It had a huge effect on us. And so we need to recognize what a historic contribution that was and how it continues to this day and how it helped the city develop over time. And what can we do to celebrate it? And that's my report. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Lorraine.
You're welcome. Any questions? No?
One thing that I should just mention, and it's in connection with the the second and third canals. Someone posted pictures on Facebook, I think just on the past weekend, alerting us to the fact that there are the remnants of three schooners in Lake Ontario at the foot of Lake Street that were probably taken into the dry docks at Port Dalhousie, stripped of anything good, then towed back out into the lake and scuttled. And apparently they're only in about 3 or 4 meters of water, so they're not all that far down. And David Gilchrist and Kimberly Monk did a couple of dives down there. They've taken pictures of the remnants. They've measured them. It's really, really cool.
I didn't hear about that. Maybe she'll talk about that in her October presentation. I think it's something like October 24th. She
Right.
said she wanted to talk about her new work. So that'd be great.
Yep. So if anybody's interested, I can send you the links to the article that David Gilchrist posted.
Yes, please.
There's some really clear pictures of the schooners too.
I believe I sent them to you from the Thorold News.
Right. That is right.
That's where I sent them. I sent
and,
them only to Brian and James, and I think the two of you, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe me.
Maybe you, yeah.
Anyway, so that's what happened on Monday night and what's been happening since 2022 with our committee.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to receive that report from Lorraine?
Sure, we can do that. We also, this is still I think we're still under miscellaneous items. So if we want to talk about Gail's item first, and then we can do all the motions, that would be. Yep, sounds good, Gail. Go ahead.
I am very nervous about this. And I'm not normally a nervous person because I make so many presentations and because of what's looming tonight. We have a communication problem within the city and within ourselves. Now, I've mentioned already that Lorraine and Brian and I are on the current public outreach committee, and I prepared and have passed this through Lorraine and Brian. It's about a page and a half. I really don't want to read it out. I'd like to send it to Lauren and James after we have a little discussion about this. I send a lot of news articles, such as the one we just discussed, onto the committee. Holly has always said, love to get these things, from the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, which I'm a longtime member. I send on all sorts of things. I've asked over and over if any of you do not want to receive them. And I've only had one person say, don't send anything political. That means nothing on any of the Ontario bills. So that's Bob Speck. So I don't send him anything like that. But I do send on things. Also I'm been a long-time member of this committee, almost as long as Brian, maybe one term less. We've worked together as a team since Lorraine joined us really, really well on the POE, doing work for the Heritage Advisory Committee. One of the things we did was we started work on a brochure, and James got on board with that and really made it splendid and really made it much better than the research that we had originally done. But in the last couple of months, we've had some communications breakdowns, and we have constantly, when I say we, I'm referring to the POE, have constantly asked staff, administrative staff, planning staff for information, and we've never received an answer ever. And it seems to be very much top down rather than bottom up in the way, excuse me, that it used to be. under other heritage planners. I'm particularly referring to Kevin Blazowski, not the other ones in between Kevin and James, who are wonderful. They both were great. We did a lot of work in the last several years. Displays at the library, 3 displays. We used the public, we asked people to help us to explain what the Heritage Advisory Committees did, that kind of thing. But over this summer, we had some miscommunications, and Carlos Garcia, Councillor Garcia, said we have a communication problem, and we do. And I'd like to be able to say that I'm the one on the POE committee that sends so many of these articles. They could be from anything. Kevin Blazowski started sending me the CHO, Community Heritage Ontario. And James, you said you might pass that on as well, not just to me, but to the other members of the committee. But recently we were told that not to do this kind of thing. We were asked to put it on the agendas of the HAC committee. And I think that would take up all of our time. We'd have to spend many more hours talking if I put every one of these articles, news articles, media articles about heritage onto this committee. I think it's counterproductive. So I'd like to send on to Lauren and to James my email that Brian and Lorraine has seen. And I'd like to address better communications. We have to be more open. It has to go both ways, between staff and between volunteers. It just has to. I guess that's about pretty well all I have to say. And I mean, we're working as public outreach and public education. I don't know how we can do that when we don't get information we ask for from city staff. I don't know how to address that at all. And I'd like some comment from maybe Brian or Lorraine or anyone on this. Would it be okay, first of all, if I send you an email? I only use email. Lauren and James. May I send this on to you? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so through the chair, I don't know if Brian wants to chime in first and then I can respond.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, in terms of communication and sending stuff out, I mean, I think Tammy made a really good suggestion that we could still forward things like this to other members of the committee and just have it as a BCC.
Yeah.
So, there wouldn't have to be the, take up time of the committee by discussing things like this. Or I guess if there's something really important out of what Gail sends or another committee member sends, we can always have that as a discussion item at the meeting. But I mean, I think just BCC the items.
Yeah,
I sort of disagree with that because, if I may, because what I've been doing recently is sending on just to you, to the chair, maybe to Lorraine. And if you feel you want to forward it, that's up to you. And I don't know how you, James, feel about the CHO now, passing that on, because I got an email from them last week saying you haven't updated your membership. And I had to say, I really am not a member. It's through the courtesy of the planning department, the heritage planner, that I alone get this. So I think a compromise can be made by my sending things to James, Lauren, and Brian, and asking them if they want to send it to the others. And that would mean we will not be seen as, I think Tammy said, as a committee of the whole.
Yeah, I think through the chair. So I think there's a couple issues here. I think first and foremost, if there's something that I haven't responded to over the last couple of months, let me know, because I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not sure what you might be referring to. And
the CHO is the one you said.
Okay.
Well, you said you'd send them to everybody,
Sure.
but then of course it seems like it has to be an agenda item.
Yeah. So the second thing I'll address then
Yeah.
so when Tammy chimed in on because there was an email, it was basically in response to 175 Main, right? There was a little bit of discussion by email, I think, following the decision that council made about 175 Main Street and the demolition. And so I think her response to that, because it kind of, our committee is unusual at the city in that a lot of you actually are friends outside of the committee, and you have relationships and you're part of other groups and stuff like that. And so there is a little bit of blurring of like, where does friendship start and where does it stop? And then where does the committee start and where does it stop? And we're lucky in that sense that we have, everybody here gets along really well and are, have personal relationships. Other committees aren't like that because it tends to be made up of just members of the community who have, been appointed to a board or a committee or whatnot. Ours is a much more tight knit group, so we do kind of blur those lines, and where it's a challenge, right? And I don't think Tammy's email was intending to say like, don't email anybody ever anything. Like, I don't think that's what she was getting at. I think what she wanted us to be careful about was having discussions about heritage issues that maybe should be done here rather than through email. And so whether it's, 175 Main was kind of a good example where, there was, the Standard wrote some articles about it, and actually, there was a lot of good stuff written about it. But I think there was some discussion in the emails that came out of that, and Tammy was copied on it, and she thought, this is more of a discussion that should be had at our meetings rather than through email, because it is supposed to be a public process. The committee is supposed to be public and everybody's supposed to be able to chime in and see, what's been said. And so when it blurs the line when emails start being sent, because that's not really public, right? So in that sense, it's tough because, like I said, everybody here gets along with each other really well, and so I don't want to deter people from sharing information. I think we want to just be careful about having conversations that maybe are more appropriate to be had here. It'll take some judgment because what's appropriate and what's not, maybe to one person might be different than another. But I think just try your best in that sense. And then and yeah, it's not something that comes up often. And I think in this case, Tammy just really wanted to make sure, because it was discussion of a demolition, and that can be very contentious, and just wanted to make sure that any conversations like that are had, at the appropriate venue. So yeah, so there's that. By all means, if anybody ever has links they want to disperse to everybody, and they feel that the Heritage Committee, would be really interested in it, send them to Lauren, send them to myself, and we'll disseminate them. I think any information about heritage, we're all in this committee for a reason, right? So I think generally it's welcome. And as you said, Gail, there was only, Bob had some issues with one type of email that he was receiving, and he just said, you know what, I'm not a fan of that stuff, and you agreed, right? So and I think everybody here has a good enough relationship with each other that you could say those things and nobody's going to take offense to it. So yeah, so and then I guess the other thing, over the last 3 months or so, if there are emails, maybe I haven't been as active in sharing information with everybody as I've been kind of transitioning from one role to another. So if you've noticed anything over the last kind of few months where that's happened, that might be, I maybe chalk it up to that. But at the same time, now that Lauren's on board, we'll have my time is now dedicated to my position, and Lauren's will be dedicated to hers, rather than one person trying to do two jobs. So hopefully that will help in terms of communication and making sure that the link between us and you guys is maintained. So I don't know if that helps, Gail, but
Oh, it does, yeah, and I'm going to stick with the compromise. I mean, I love sending on the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario things to you, because I mean, if you aren't interested, if this whole committee isn't interested in that, well, heck.
Yeah, exactly. And I think everybody probably is. I think everybody would like to receive those emails because they're important.
But do you think Tammy was referring to that kind of thing, the ACO stuff?
I really do think that her comment, because her email response was really as a response to the discussion out of 175 Main Street that was had a couple weeks ago. I don't think she was really specifically saying, it was related to CHO or anything like that. But that's my take on it. I think we just need to be careful about what conversations are had. I think sharing links, that's fine, but if there's discussion that's going to come out of them, bring them to here. Maybe they're good topics for us to discuss when we have maybe light agendas and stuff like that, right? So obviously this week, this meeting was pretty heavy. We had a lot going on, but there are months where we're like, you know what, we don't have as much to talk about, and maybe that's when we discuss some of those issues. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Lorraine?
Thanks, Bren. James, I just wanted to say thanks for clarifying that. That made a lot of sense to me. I understand kind of where that was coming from and sort of that distinction. So thank you. And I don't want you to walk away from this thinking that you've dropped the ball at all. I think I speak on behalf of everyone here that you are very responsive, and we have definitely appreciated that.
Oh, yes.
You get back to us quickly. You're there to solve any kind of issue. So no, we really appreciate all the work that you've put into being our heritage planner, and all the work that you've done as being, we know, as senior project manager, you're balancing those two. And I don't think that you've dropped the ball in any way, shape, or form. So thank you for all you've done.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Thanks, Lorraine.
You're welcome.
True.
Okay, so if there's no further questions or comments about any of this stuff, because the afternoon is marching on, I guess we need a motion to receive these different updates.
Yeah, essentially just a motion to receive the presentation from Lorraine and the communication discussion from Gail and your items as well. So we can craft those motions later, but just need somebody to propose those motions.
Dr. Bergen, thank you. And all in favor? None. Okay, items updates from subcommittees. The designations subcommittee hasn't met, but I see that Lauren will be hopefully meeting with us next month at some point.
Yeah, through the chair, that's the plan. So we'll be meeting. Andrew is the chair of that committee, and now that he's back and willing to get the ball rolling on some of this stuff, we'll be able to have discussions about our next meeting, which will probably be in a few weeks, I imagine. But Lauren will be taking charge on that, and hopefully we can get the ball rolling on some more designations. So yeah.
And that's going to be a virtual meeting as well?
It'll be the same, yeah. It'll be hopefully our typical time and place, but I think what we'll do, because we haven't met in a while, we'll send out an email to everybody just that was part of that subcommittee, just to confirm that the time and date works for everybody.
Okay.
We'll be in touch probably next week. We'll figure that out.
Okay, sounds good. So we had no correspondence, unless anybody has something that they want to add at this point. Our next meeting will be October 31st, same bat time, same bat station. So that being said, do we have a motion to adjourn? Lorraine, thank you. And all in favor? Okay, it's 4:54 according to my clock. So thanks, everybody.
See you later this
Thank
evening
you.
Thanks all.
at
It was
the
lovely meeting
Historical
everyone.
Society.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Take